The only way to prevent history from repeating itself is to keep retelling the stories.
We were definitely in a prison camp surrounded by barbed wires with armed guards in watchtowers around the perimeter of the camp.
Sally Sudo was living in Seattle during the attack on Pearl Harbor that led to the United States entry into World War II. She and her family were forcibly removed from their home and placed in an internment camp in Idaho.
They tried to tell us that we were being put in these camps for our own protection, but actually the guns were always pointed at us. This is where I spent almost 4 years of my childhood, from the age of 6 until I was almost 10.
She shared stories from this experience at a recent coffee talk at Creekside Community Center. The event took place on the anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack.
The camps were in very dry, desolate areas, places where no one had ever lived before, so there were really harsh conditions. And we lived in military-style barracks. Each barrack was divided up into 6 rooms. Most families only got 1 room, which was about a 20 by 20 room.
While this type of imprisonment was unjust, it wasn't the beginning of it. Sally lived in a segregated neighborhood in Seattle.
Even before the war, we faced much discrimination. I think every new immigrant group goes through that kind of pattern. But after Pearl Harbor, things really got a lot worse. I mean, people's houses were being spray painted with hateful signs. We had bricks thrown through windows. You were always being called names or even being spit at. So the atmosphere was definitely, really very ugly.
While many families endured similar situations, that wasn't the case for all Japanese Americans.
My family did not suffer the injustices that those who were on the mainland suffered. I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, after the war.
Sylvia Yasuda Farrells also spoke at the event. She studied this topic extensively and says Japanese Americans living in Hawaii had a very different experience.
Because the Japanese made up about 30% of the population at that time, it would have been a severe economic problem if all of them were detained or put into a camp of some sort.
Both Sylvia and Sally taught in Minneapolis public schools, but now they focus their time on keeping this history alive.
I do have friends who are probably in their 50s as not having had this information in high school or middle school. Many of them tell me that they had not heard about the taking of the Japanese from the West Coast and the camps that they were put in. They didn't believe that our government would do anything like that to any citizen of whatever nationality they were.
That's why teaching folks about it is so important. Our future depends on it.
The situation in our country today is very similar. There's hysteria and fear of anyone perhaps of color that maybe immigrated to the U.S. from another country, that this kind of thing is certainly unconstitutional and should never happen to any citizen.
The story is still relevant today. In just looking around, listening to the news, you see that a lot of what's happening in our country today must be very similar to what happened right after Pearl Harbor.
So these women will keep sharing their history in hopes of preventing the same mistakes.